migrant district. Here he goes, crossing himself. Oh! He's done.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most from the East Coast, and I will soon be joined by my co-host. Gang, today's show is going to be interesting because I rarely actually take time to respond to mainstream kind of well-known apologists. It's probably something we should do more because it's good for the old algorithm. So we'll do a little bit of that today. We're going to be talking about the evidence for the resurrection featuring Fuckface Frank Turek. I think he's gonna probably have some intro shit to say or whatever, so I'll let that roll while we wait for my one black friend. All right.
How many don't respond to surveys? 3 out of 10 don't respond to surveys, Pastor Chip. Some of you may have heard me tell this true story before, but it bears repeating right now. Let's go all the way back to September 29th, 2006. That's when Petty Officer Michael Monsour is a United States Navy SEAL operating in Ramadi, Iraq. Monsour is standing on a roof in Ramadi, and he's standing in front of a doorway to this roof. He has 2 Navy SEAL teammates lying in the sniper-prone position next to him. They've already taken AK-47 fire and a rocket-propelled grenade, but they're not exactly sure where the enemy is. There's a bit of a lull in the fighting. Insurgents have blocked off the streets in Ramadi, and there's someone on the loudspeaker in the town mosque yelling, "Kill the Americans!" As Monsour and his team are looking for the next attack, an insurgent from an unknown location throws a grenade up on the roof. It hits Monsour in the chest, and it falls to his feet. Due to the length of the throw, there's no opportunity to pick it up and throw it back. He has only a split second to make a decision. He can leap through the doorway behind him and save himself, but if he does, his 2 teammates lying on the roof at his feet will surely die. Monsour yells, "Grenade!" But instead of jumping backward to save himself, he jumps forward chest first onto the grenade. It detonates. 30 minutes later, 25-year-old Michael Monsour is dead. His 2 teammates receive only minor injuries because Monsour's body muffled the blast. One of the survivors at Monsour's funeral said, "Mikey looked death in the face that day and said, 'You will not take my friends. I will go in their stead.'" I've never seen a United States president cry until April of 2008. That's when President...
All right, gang, and now I am joined by a man who does not believe in Godzilla, even though he has seen multiple pieces of video proof. A man who needs no introduction. How you doing?
I'm good.
So
I'm losing some of the signal.
You're back.
I'm back. Yeah, missing my Godzilla intro.
Yeah. So the so far we're talking about I guess we're going to talk about evidence for the resurrection.
What evidence?
Frank But Frank Turek is starting by telling us about Michael Monsour, who died jumping on a grenade to save his comrades or teammates.
Yes.
George W. Bush invited Monsour's parents into the East Room of the White House to give them their son's Medal of Honor posthumously. The president couldn't even get through the citation without breaking down.
Yeah, the military exploitation is the worst.
Since then, Monsour's high school in Garden Grove, California, built a new stadium. They named it Michael A. Monsour Memorial Stadium. The golden trident insignia that the SEALs wear dominates the 50-yard line.
Wow. Wow. Gang, everybody's clapping for the
January
field.
2019,
what?
San Diego, California, North Island to be specific. The United States Navy commissioned the USS Michael Monsour, the newest guided missile destroyer in the fleet, Zumwalt class. This is Monsour's mother, Sally, being escorted onto the ship named in honor of her fallen son.
She's like, great, a boat.
Now, why did they do this? Because Michael Monsour literally sacrificed himself to save his friends. There's no greater love than to sacrifice yourself to save your friends, said Jesus of Nazareth before he went to the cross.
Can you pause it right there? Pause it right there. Now, you will remember, while at dinner, Jesus let Satan enter his friend Judas. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
And also, wouldn't it have been great if Michael Monsour was at home watching football rather than having a fucking football field named after him and a boat? I mean, this is just straight exploitation of the military. And it's ironic that these people who do this are always pining about the sacrifices these people make, yet they support the politicians who keep sending them places to die. Like, well, if I had my way, Michael Monsour would still be alive, and I'm sure he'd prefer that than the boat.
Turek is former military himself. I forget which branch of the services he served in. So this might be particularly meaningful to him because obviously he spent years serving this country. And so maybe he feels a little bit more connected to this guy in this example as opposed to some other example.
It's also likely to me that probably his religiosity played a motivating role in his serving, right? Because that's the whole
that deal. Could be.
They elevate the greatest, because if the greatest thing you can do for someone is to die for them, then it's also probably the greatest thing you could do for your country, and that's often how military service is.
I would say probably the greatest thing you can do for another person is live for them, you know?
Yeah, me too.
Because if you just die, your contribution is ended. Yep. But if you're one of these like selfless people like the Doctors Without Borders who put themselves in danger to go to these third world countries and save people's lives, if they just died for them and sent the insurance money, that's not as good.
Absolutely.
Oh, look at the trees.
Michael Monsour sacrificed himself to save his friends. The question is, would anyone sacrifice himself to save you? And the answer is, someone already has. His name is Jesus of Nazareth. But in today's culture, a lot of people don't think the story's true. They think it's invented. After all, these are religious people. They embellished this, didn't they? And by the way, it's got miracles in it, like a resurrection. How can you believe in such a thing like a resurrection? We don't see miracles anymore.
We saw them last week.
Well,
we saw
it's
this.
Really easy to show that Christianity.
Oh, go ahead.
If you want to see a miracle, just watch last week's hot program. There's several of them. We had a miracle-packed broadcast last week.
It's true. You only need to answer 4 questions in the affirmative to show that it's true. In other words, if you investigate these 4 questions, I think you'll realize.
Gang, like, subscribe, and check out last week's show.
The answer to these 4 questions is yes.
You can binge.
And if the answer to these 4 questions is yes.
Gang, that was so funny. Remember when we first started Hot Program? That was kind of like a thing. Was like you'd go to the channel. We worried there wasn't enough videos. We've done a lot of Hot Programs now. You could binge watch Hot Program throughout the week if you want.
There's more than 50 of them by now, I think.
Then Christianity's true. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. Does truth exist? Does God exist? Are miracles possible? And is the New Testament true about the resurrection? Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Now, we don't have time to go through all these, obviously, here tonight.
If I just hit it real quick, gang, it'd be literally yes and then all no's. So to me, this is the perfect example of just sneak in a little bit of truth, a little bit of facts, a little bit of reality, and then you can just build a mountain of BS on top of it.
Well, maybe our audience wants to play along. So in the chat, if you could, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. In Turk's presentation, just do 1, 2, 3, 4, yes or no, and put them all in one post.
Message.
I guess it's called.
Yeah.
So for myself, does the truth exist? Yes. Does God exist? I don't think so. I don't know for sure, but I don't think so. Are miracles possible? No. But you can trick people into believing they've seen a miracle, and then you can continue to tell stories about that for millennia. Is the New Testament true? Not entirely. There may be elements of truth in the New Testament. We certainly can understand that.
I'm just all knows.
You're just all knows, huh?
Just
The truth doesn't exist.
No, that's the yes. I said I'm yes and all
knows. Yes, and the rest are no's. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Non-believer has chimed in.
Yes. Last week we covered a little bit of point 2, and we talked about the moral argument for the existence of God. Tonight, however, I want to jump down here to the final point. Is the New Testament true? In fact, in previous years here at Grace, we've gone through some of these other points. But tonight, I just want to point out that the evidence for the New Testament being true is very good, particularly being true about one event from the ancient world. What's that event? The resurrection. Because if Jesus rose from the dead, game over, Christianity is true. Of course, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, game over, it's false. You might as well sleep in on Sunday. Well, you guys are up at Saturday, it doesn't matter. And do what you want the rest of the week, because if God doesn't exist and Jesus didn't rise from the dead, Christianity's false. So what's the evidence?
Okay. Thanks, Frank.
That it's really true. What is the evidence that the New Testament writers are telling the truth about this? There are several lines of evidence. In fact, in the book,
you don't have
top
any.
10 reasons we know the New Testament writers told the truth. We're just going to briefly look tonight at 2 of them. The first we're going to look at is something called embarrassing stories. Embarrassing stories. What are embarrassing stories?
I don't know.
Why
maybe
would we talk about embarrassing stories?
I don't know why I thought you posted a link.
Well, historians know that if they're investigating a text and there's something embarrassing to the author or authors in the text, it's probably true. Now, why would it be true? Because you're never going to invent details or stories that make you look bad. You might invent things that make you look good, right? But you're not going to invent things that make you look bad. In fact, let me ask you guys a question in here. How many people in here have ever lied to make yourself look good? Look, if you don't have your hand up right now, you're lying to make yourself look good, and it's not working. We know you're lying. All right, how many people in here have ever lied to make yourself look bad? You don't do that, right?
You do.
Lie to make yourself look good,
Christians
but you won't lie
they do.
to embarrass yourself.
Yeah, this is definitely what believers do all the time. And also, I just notice how they never lay out the evidence. Gang, could you imagine going to a scientific conference and asking for the evidence for evolution and then starting with the whole song and dance? Well, do you ever lie to make yourself look good or bad? Like, there's going to be this whole presentation without any actual presentation of evidence. It's just mind-boggling that people still buy into this guy.
So, Pocket Locker, I'm going to listen. I got to go and grab my Throckmorton's. I'm going to go grab my Throckmorton's, which is like the New Testament side-by-side for the Gospels. So I can help deconstruct Mr. Turek's arguments.
Well, the New
Testament
writers, this is true of the Old Testament as well, but the New Testament writers have filled the New Testament with embarrassing stories they never would have invented. That's why we're calling this the Duff Factor. They're not making this up. Let me just give you a few of these. Notice the New Testament writers depict themselves as dim-witted. I mean, they don't even understand Jesus' mission. You're reading through the Gospels, they're going, we didn't know what Jesus was saying. We didn't know what he was talking about. It's not until he's already resurrected and ascended to heaven do they understand
Frank's never heard of
what Jesus
self-deprecation.
really his
He's
mission
never
was.
has, no.
It's only then that they go, wow, I could have had a V8, right? Up to that point, they don't get it. That's embarrassing. Also, their leader, Peter, is called Satan by Jesus. Do you think they invented this? Do you think Peter or Mark, who wrote this down, at one point said to Peter,
Holy
hey, Pete,
crap.
I'm going to make this a real interesting story. I'm going to have the Lord call you Satan. What do you think Peter would have said? Have him call you Satan. I mean, why is he calling me Satan? I'm the leader here. This is embarrassing. And then Peter says, oh,
Frank
Lord,
Turek,
I'll
this
never deny
presentation is
you. What does he
embarrassing.
wind up doing? He denies him 3 times. And then at the crucifixion, all the disciples, maybe with the exception of one, they all run away. This is like a Monty Python movie. Run away. They all run away. And who are the brave ones? The women. The women are the brave ones.
Oh, my
now,
goodness,
who wrote
brave
the New
women,
Testament
gang.
documents down?
Can you imagine?
Men. Now, what man
Oh,
is
goodness.
going to invent that he was hiding for fear of the Jews why the women went
Christians,
down?
please don't try to tell me how you're not misogynistic when literally I can't ever get through a defense of the faith without, well, the women were the brave ones. And who found the empty body, the empty tomb? It was the
empty tomb,
women.
yeah.
And nobody would write it so that the women discovered the empty tomb. And then Jesus was hanging out with sex workers. Come on, I mean, these people were considered the lowest on earth. And did you hear the part when Jesus was speaking to the woman who was found in adultery? He suggested that they don't stone her. Gang, this book is just filled with misogyny on top of misogyny on top of misogyny on top of misogyny. It's just absolutely crazy.
Down, discovered the empty tomb. Would any man
The
in here invent that?
women.
I mean, if I was there and I was inventing it, I'd make myself look good, wouldn't you? I mean, I'd write something down like this. Let's see. We marched right down there and we overpowered that elite Roman guard. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. What do you think? Yep. John said, get out. Peter roundhouse kicked him. Thomas said, we'll be back. No doubt about it. And then on Sunday morning, we marched right down to the tomb, and we saw Jesus, who congratulated us on our great faith. And then we went and comforted the trembling women. I would never say it was Mr. Sissy Pants why the women went down and discovered the empty tomb. And oh, by the way, why would you never have the women be the first witnesses in that culture?
Oh,
Yes,
this
because
is
a
just
woman's
totally
testimony is not
debunked.
considered on par with that of a man. So if you're making up the New Testament
Let's just not sit here and act like this man has not been told to his face,
Many
and
times.
time again, that this is not true, and women were allowed to testify in court.
story, you'd only have the men.
So
be
wait,
the first witnesses.
pause it. So I've pulled out my gospel parallels. I think this is who did this? Throckmorton? Yeah, Burton H. Throckmorton Jr. You can get this on Amazon, and what it does is it shows you the gospels side by side, so you can see the similarities and differences in the story. I also got a large print floppy Bible, so you can believe everything I tell you about the Bible because it's floppy, like many creatures today. By the way, if you are a Christian, I would like to encourage you to read the Bible. This large print fluffy Bible, including its dictionary, is 2,004 pages. So if you've been a Christian for 10 years and you haven't read it all, you can contact me. I'll send you one. Hello, my one black friend at gmail.com. I will give you a free one. So I'm ready. Bring it on.
Yet all 4 gospels say the women were the first witnesses, which is telling us what? They really
What a
were.
bunch of assholes.
They never would have invented this. It's embarrassing. In fact, one of the women was a formerly demon-possessed woman. Oh, gee, what a great witness. Yeah, let's put her out there. In fact, I actually know a woman once when I was doing a presentation like this. She came up to me afterwards and she said, Frank, I know why Jesus appeared to the women first. I said, why? And she said, because he wanted to get the story out. I said, that is an excellent point. I hadn't thought of that. Because, ladies, when your man comes home from work, does he say
gossip.
much?
Exactly.
There could have been a
Men
nuclear
don't
explosion
talk. Men
down
just
at the
go
plant.
out. They provide
He's
for the
not
family.
tell
They
you.
come home.
You'll see it on the news before you.
They lovingly raise their children by not speaking. Then they're at the head of the table at dinner time, also not speaking. Then they go to bed and definitely don't say a word to anybody. But those women folk, they just, you know what? If you want to tell someone a secret, but you don't want it to remain a secret, you should tell a woman. It's just Christians. Just fine, Christians. You get to be this way. You get to believe these things. You get to tell each other this nonsense in church. But you do not then get to turn around and try to convince the rest of us you're not misogynist. You don't get to do. You sorry, we heard you. We heard you, Frank. It's on tape. There were cameras there. You knew there were going to be cameras there. That's why you made this stupid backdrop. So I'm not.
Hear it from him.
Oh, it's just the
You'll be
worst.
watching the news going,
Can't believe I used to be a Christian.
Hey, hon, what? Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you the nuke blew up. I've been hot for 3 days. What's for dinner? He's not going to tell you. I can't even believe this next verse is in the New Testament, but it is. Do you know the end of the Gospel of Matthew? This is where Jesus is giving the Great Commission. This is the reason Grace Community Church and all churches exist. Go therefore, make disciples of all nations. Notice he doesn't say make believers. He says make disciples. There's a difference, right? And he says, go therefore, make disciples of all nations, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age, you know, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. He's given them their marching orders.
Yes, and the Christian.
Can you pause it?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So my point of view is that if there was a Jesus of Nazareth, if this was a real guy, and he wasn't a con man, okay? Or, sorry, he wasn't knowingly a con man. When he says things like go and make disciples of all nations, he's referring to Hebrew nations. He's not saying, I want you to go to what will be called North America in the future, Nicaragua or someplace like that, and go over there and make disciples.
Right.
So he's talking about the Hebrews, because part of what was going to signify the end times, the end of the end times, was that the Hebrews would be regathered. And so he's saying, like, you go get them, guys. You'll notice if you read the Gospels, he's walking around. He's not staying in one spot because he's trying to collect these people from different regions, right? These Hebrews from different regions, get them to hear his message and come back to Jerusalem. Because remember, there's supposed to be, according to Revelation, there's supposed to be a war that's in Megiddo, and people are going to gather around, all the armies of the world are going to gather around Jerusalem and kick the butt of the Hebrews. Now, many people, most scholars even, will likely disagree with me, because I say my point of view is that Revelation was written before all the Gospels, all of them. But there are people who will disagree with that. For me, it just seems to make more things work together. So he's not telling these guys, because Jesus couldn't come through, right? He couldn't finish that mission. He couldn't get all those people together. And let me tell you how smart, if he was real, let me tell you how smart he was. And if this is all just writers writing stories, here's how smart they were. You'll notice the different festivals and feasts that are around the time that Jesus gets crucified. When you read the Bible, you'll notice that. So it's like, well, see, look at all these people that came back. Like, they were coming anyway, man. He might have got a few more people to go. Excuse me. He might have gotten many thousands more, maybe even tens of thousands more people to come. He did not get them all to come.
Yeah, and I doubt if he had that wide of an influence. Because most people think it started really small, but yeah, I definitely see your point. But
Well, if
also,
you
this is just the basis of dominionism, and so my thing is they do not get to stand up on a stage, believe it, because again, my thing is the Christian. We got to deal with Christianity as it is today, right? And they all see this as the Great Commission, and they talk about it all the time. It's why they won't stop trying to evangelize their neighbors, and it's irritating to me because we live in a world that Christian nationalism is such a problem, but Christians act like they're not participating in it, yet they believe, whether it's true to the original interpretation or not, that they are to go forth and Christianize the whole planet. So it's at some point we're going to have to address the elephant in the room that this is in fact how people interpret the gospel doctrine, and most Christians, even the non-extreme ones, do in fact think that they are commanded to do this. So it's just kind of an issue, but it's wishful thinking.
As he's doing this, it says right in the text in verse 17 about the disciples, it says, some believed, but some doubted. What? He's standing resurrected right in front of them. And some of them appear to be doubting. It says right in the text, it's like
pause it. Because it could be a scam. That's one great reason for some people to doubt. They do not know if they're being tricked, but they know what's before their eyes is not typical. What is apparently going on may be a deception of some kind.
Oh yeah.
It is perfectly okay that some doubted. Look, hold on. I'm about to hold my floppy Bible up. There are many things within the pages of this Bible that I doubt. It's even floppy. And still, I don't believe a snake talked. I don't believe a donkey talked. Now, the snake in that story, I'll give you, it can be symbolic. And I believe it is symbolism. But I don't believe a bush talked. No. Ezekiel, I get that it uses trees to represent nations, and other people in the Bible use trees to represent nations. I get it, but I shouldn't think that certain trees are special because of just what type of tree they are. There's lots of things you can't just believe. I don't think a guy walked on water.
And again, it's freaking ethno nationalism. It's crazy. It's not even. It's not even within the realm of like acceptable modern worldview. Like you would be considered a monster if you literally said, "Well, it's just a moral for a story about how my particular tribe has dominion over the rest of the earth." I mean, it's just a metaphor for
nothing much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
nothing.
It's like these guys are crazy, man.
They're standing there going, "You see that guy over there? Yeah, that guy over there is Jesus. Oh no, it can't be Jesus. He was just killed not long ago. No, I'm telling you, it's him. Look, Jesus is dead. It can't be him. It's him." The Romans killed him. They put his spear in his side. Blood water came out after whipping him and nailing him to a cross. That guy's dead.
Can you pause it? Can you pause it? All right. So many of you didn't see this, but earlier today, actually none of you saw this. Earlier today, I took some of my medication. So I have a heart condition called cardiomyopathy. Basically, there's a scar on my heart. That's not like Christian knees or something. There literally is a scar on my heart. Doctors don't know how it got on there. I don't know how it got on there, but anyway. So that part of my heart doesn't beat. It's just more like sealing my heart from having a crack in it or something like that. As a result of having cardiomyopathy and my heart not beating very vigorously, think about that. It's vigorously, okay? I have a tendency to retain water. So I take two pills to help get the extra fluid out of my body. Walking helps too, just so you know. And when Jesus is on the cross and that centurion pokes him and blood and water come out, it's not a miracle. It's not a miracle. This is his body. He's in heart failure. He's dying. That is what is happening to him. Again, this is one of the pieces of evidence that either tells me the gospel writers were good storytellers. They had maybe seen a crucifixion or two or three or heard details about them. But it doesn't mean to me that the story is 100% true.
Yeah, I
Doesn't.
also just, it's just the story that's the claim of these things. So I actually doubt that they poked the spear in his side, because from what we hear, that wasn't really a common thing. I think it's an added detail to sell, because they were swoon theory, right? I think that what Christians don't realize is the Bible contains biblical apologetics within the Bible, because it's an evolving document. And so I think that detail is in there so that you don't think swoon theory is possible. But nevertheless, he still is giving us the biblical death and resurrection story as proof of the biblical death and resurrection. In other words, people really, and it's like, this is not evidence, right? This is a person calls 911 and they say, I got mugged on my way out of the grocery store. It is the claim. It is not the evidence that they got mugged on their way out of the grocery store. That would require some other external eyewitnesses, some photographic evidence, some something, a receipt for groceries and the rest of the items still in a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, it's just infuriating that he sits here and acts like, oh yeah, we can just use the gospel narrative as proof of the gospel narrative.
It is. How do you know?
Yeah. So can you pause it again?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about this. So the beauty of that Throckmorton's, and I'm not going to do a good job of showing you guys this, but it shows the different gospels side by side. So when something happens in one, right there, it happens in all three. If it happens in all three, it's showing you. Okay. So Jesus is up there on the cross. I'm going to show you how different writers manipulate the same thing, right? If it's the original source material or a true event. Matthew 50. Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice. Mark chapter 15:37. Then Jesus gave a loud cry. Oh, and breathed his last breath. They both say something of that nature. Then let's go to Luke. Then Jesus crying aloud. Doesn't say he breathed his last breath. With a loud voice said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last breath. So there he goes. He breathes his last. Okay. So they all agree he died, right? Similar way, but notice what's said is different. You've no doubt heard all that before. If we look at what the centurion that was there at the cross says, I didn't prepare this ahead of time. We go to Luke 23:47. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, certainly this man was innocent. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let's go to now. Yes, Matthew chapter 27. Now, when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, truly, this man was God's son. Many women who were also there looking on from the distance. Okay, so skip that part. Then go to Mark. Now, when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, truly, this man was God's son. So, to me, I could take one of these as they're mocking. Just because there's an earth like, oh, this was the son of God. Surely this was the son of God. The guy just died. He didn't save himself. Right. There was nothing. There was no. I can see the centurion standing there. There's no miracle. If he grew up in Rome or with understanding of the Roman gods, Yeah, sometimes there were demigods. Yeah, the gods had problems and fought each other and stuff like that and could die. But to me, there's no reason for him to think that Jesus is miraculous in any way or special in any
So
way. He didn't see him heal anything or
I
anyone.
I just think this stuff is made up. I don't think anybody who was really crucified had their last words recorded. This was something that even I believed as a Christian. Like
Mhm.
I became a Christian. Really didn't believe literally, because I believed like I like read a lot of stuff that was trying to figure out what would actually happen, and if Jesus
Mhm.
died, I accepted he died as a common criminal. All that other stuff that he was flanked to his right and his left and the da, 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 that is like saying that that you I don't know, fell in love with somebody because they came through a drive-through window at Wendy's. Like, no, you serve 200 hamburgers a day. You don't ask for none of their names. You don't remember what none of them say to you. Yeah, every once in a while says, but it would have been a thoroughly unremarkable event. But what's interesting is, why do they put it in there? So to me, they put this stuff in there because I think the church fathers are chill. They're selling, right? And they're selling this thing. So to me,
Yes.
they're not gonna make. So to me, they're putting this in there to sell this magical story of the conviction of the centurions. But you could see it as a mocking, because if part of that is he comes out that grave later on, man, and because they talk about how they mocked him and they stripped him down and they
Yep.
spit on him and they called him
Mhm.
names. So then this could be that sort of last final insult, right?
That's right. Surely this was the Son of God.
Yeah, right. And then he's gonna come
Mhm.
back in the third act and make those centurions look stupid. But in no scenario is this, to me, genuine recorded history. And it's just very it, it's fun. Hearing Christian apologists talk about this is literally like fuck J.K. Rowling or whatever, but it's like Harry Potter people going to a Harry Potter convention and him giving a keynote on, what it really means to be a muggle and all this type of stuff.
Mhm.
It's just creating reality out of a fantasy world. It's just really problematic.
Well, look, there is
Did I mute
now
him?
a Jedi. There's a Jedi religion. We know that was made up.
Exactly. Wait, hang on. This is
Non-believer.
like, did I just catch him in the? Did I mute him?
How do you know?
Watch this. Watch this move.
The women.
He's doing the robot. He's doing the
I don't
robot.
know why that was so funny to me, but that was hilarious.
Throw some dubstep behind that.
The women told me. They're not making this up. There's even potentially embarrassing details about Jesus in the text. Notice Jesus is called a drunkard. He's called demon possessed. You think they invented this? He has his feet wiped with the hair of a prostitute.
Yeah, they're just selling
which
his
easily could have been seen as
humiliation.
a sexual advance. And oh,
my
by the way,
goodness.
there are two prostitutes in Jesus' bloodline. Who are they? Rahab and Tamar. She's playing a prostitute anyway. Do you think that they invented this? This is embarrassing. This is the
Oh, my
Messiah's
goodness.
bloodline. You think when Matthew and Luke
It's
were
the
recording the
perfect sales
genealogies,
pitch.
they went to one another and said, you know what? I really think we ought to spice up the Messiah's bloodline a little bit. Let's put a couple
Pause
of
it. Pause
prostitutes
it.
in
Pause
there.
it.
Rahab.
Pause it.
No.
Pause it. So, I just read Flavius Josephus's Against Appian, where he details of how genealogical records, now this is before the destruction of the temple, I believe, were kept in the temple. And not just one in Jerusalem, but multiple temples. So they should be able to figure out who you're related to going back quite a ways, because these records were kept. How they kept track of millions of people, I guess you could do it without Microsoft Excel, but why would you want to?
Yeah, I don't think they
So
because who are they for, right? Like I always say you can't have your cake and eat it too. Jesus can't be the carpenter's stepson from the middle of nowhere in Nazareth and
Mhm.
also be the subject of royal record keeping. Right? Because to me, you keep the records for the rich people, the powerful people, the people who have positions in the. So, again, it's like they. To me, it's a sales thing, right? It's that whole line of David, whatever thing they've got to do, but it's really weird because at least I think on the surface, to a modern eye, these things seem pretty inconsistent. Seems pretty unlikely that Jesus would have been the type of person to have his
well,
lineage
look,
picked.
I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, which I'm told still is one of the greatest places you can go to research your genealogy. If you want to know where you came from, go there. Go to the library, and they will show you how to look it up. Or I guess you can do the internet now. But people still go to Fort Wayne to research their genealogies because they have all these amazing records kept there. I couldn't tell you why. So when I was a kid, and I was initially told this, reminded recently by someone who still lives there, um, it was all on paper. It wasn't on computers.
Right.
The library literally had like a server that you could look some things up in the Dewey Decimal System on when I was in my teens. But we had the card catalogs that were just these long rows of these cabinets that had all these little cards in it, and you could look up a book and it would tell you where the book was. If you knew the author, if you knew the name of the book, it would tell you, go here in the library, and that's where it is. So surely you could have scroll after scroll after scroll in these different temples storing these people's names because it would be important for ownership of land because they had like the Jubilee year where land might have gone back to a different family. If it was sold, it might have gone
Yeah, like
back.
census type
Uh,
stuff.
yeah, so it could conceivably be useful. And I didn't think about it until you said it a moment ago. For all the people that want to be in the lineage of David, because that was important, right? The Messiah is supposed to be of the lineage of David. You could know whether or not someone was lying. But
Yeah.
Josephus doesn't say that Jesus was from the line of David. They say, well, he talks about John. This is completely an aside. Josephus talks about John the Baptist. I think that's faked. I think that's a forgery because Josephus did hang out for 3 years with a John the Baptist kind of figure called Bonus. And yet when he talks about John the Baptist, he doesn't mention Bonus.
Mm.
I think that would be important. Like, oh, this was like my mentor, Bonus. I spent 3 years with. So anyway, whatever. That's an aside.
All right, let's get back to the.
No. In fact, there's a lot of shady people in the bloodline. Judah, from where we get the term Jew from, Jesus from the tribe of Judah, not a good guy. Read about him in Genesis. David.
Oh my!
David, a man after
weird.
God's own heart. Yeah, but he's a liar, adulterer, and a murderer. Gee, I guess there's hope for the rest of us then, huh? Bathsheba's in there. In the genealogy of the Messiah. And when Matthew gets to her in his genealogy, he won't even mention her name. You know what he says instead? Uriah's wife. Ooh. He's telling the truth, but it's a slam. Who was Uriah? Husband of Bathsheba, whom David had killed so he could have Bathsheba. He could cover up his sin. This is all in there. It's not whitewashed at all. If you want the ultimate no spin zone, read the Bible. It tells you warts and all the evil that these so-called heroes have done.
And the evil that God did too.
Making it up.
Uncle Bobby, how much do you think these people paid for this, gang? What do you think the ticket price for this seminar is? Just so you could have. So let's imagine the truth here. He is really selling his book. So a lot of these people, you have to presume, either are interested or are going to buy his book. So they might have They dropped $45 on a Frank Turek seminar. another 35 on the book, just so he can lie to them and teach them how to lie to other people. And with just the most outdated, boring, worn out apologetics. I mean, there's nothing even remotely new about any of this.
It's embarrassing.
All
They're telling the truth.
Way
That's
debunked.
number one. The second reason we know the New Testament writers are telling the truth that we're going to talk about tonight is the fact that they died excruciating deaths. This is actually a painting of Peter being crucified upside down. We don't actually know if he was crucified upside down. We do know he was martyred for his faith. We know that Paul was martyred for his faith. Two Jameses were martyred for their faith. We know of nobody from the ancient world that ever recanted and said, did it happen? We've got good evidence they actually died for their faith. Now,
no, we don't.
Just well,
more
it's really
lies.
important to understand.
So we have the Bible tells us about the stoning of Stephen.
That's one of them.
Yeah, but it doesn't say how Paul died. It doesn't say how Paul died. Well, Stephen was preaching, if I remember right, and they thought he was. Well, we could look it up, but anyway, it's not relevant because we're really trying to find out where this other information comes from, right? It's supposed to be like extra biblical notations on how.
I don't know the
how these people died. So sorry, I missed what you said because my head.
No, I was just saying I don't know what the 5 E's are, but yeah, this is just a myth that, and this is a common one amongst Christians. They really, you'll hear a lot of people in church talk about how we know the apostles died for their faith, and
New Testament
but you can make that up too. Again, part of, to me, again, like I said, I think overall this is just a grift. But part of the way that one of the things that makes it compelling is that these people died, and you can go around telling this story. You don't ever have to prove it. Jesus and his disciples could have went from town to town pulling the same scams on people in just different ways. Like, okay, this week you two are going to be the married couple because you know the language better, and I'll be the prophet with all these powers. Y'all be the son of God. I need you to be the guy who has who's blind, right? Did somebody walk up to him and check? Like, right. You could have the two witnesses that say, no, this guy's been blind since he was a kid.
Right.
And now the story goes around. These people tell this story. Oh my gosh, you should have seen it. This guy healed this guy had been blind.
Just like the African miracle workers. Jesus could
just like the African miracle workers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is
much more probable. Much more.
That's more probable than him being the Son of God, as
all
described.
Of the New Testament writers, with the exception of Luke, all of the New Testament writers were Yahweh-believing Jews who thought they were
we don't know that either.
Chosen people. Nope. They didn't think a man could claim to be God. That would be blasphemy. They didn't think someone would resurrect in the middle of time. They thought someone would all resurrect at the end of time, according to Daniel 12. But they didn't think someone could claim to be God and resurrect in the middle of time. This is completely against their worldview. But somehow, they change their 2,000-plus-year-old religion almost overnight. Why did they do this? Well, let's take a look at the apostles' beliefs and practices before and after the resurrection. Remember, they're all Jews, except for Luke, the writers. Before, they believed in animal sacrifice. They've been slaying lambs
the Bible tells us that the Bible is true because in the Bible it says that the Bible
Jesus
is true.
comes along and they say, we don't need to slay these lambs anymore because here's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. All these lambs are just symbols.
Oh, the apostles' lives
of the
were
Lamb
changed.
who is now arrived. Before they believed in a binding law of Moses.
Can you pause it? Can you pause it?
Has fulfilled the binding.
So Daniel talks about the book of Daniel. I just listened to Dr. Josh Bowen give a presentation from 4 years ago, I think it was, on YouTube. But Daniel has he's saying like the end times are coming when you see an end of sacrifices in the temple. So can you see how Christians are trying to make it be that if the
Yes,
sacrifice in the temple stopped, because no, you don't need to kill lambs and turtle doves and stuff like that. You don't have to do that anymore because Jesus died. He's the propitiation for all sin. Hey, hey, think of the savings on lambs and stuff. You don't have to drag one of those with you from Podunk, or
Yeah, it's
Bumfuck
not a,
Egypt
it's
or
not a,
wherever.
it's not prophecy if you're trying to make it true.
Law of
Mm-hmm.
Moses. Before they believe in strict monotheism. Afterwards, they're believing in a trinity, 3 persons in one divine essence. Yes, I know you can get the Trinity from the Old Testament, but it's much clearer in the New. Before they believed in the Sabbath, in fact, they thought they could be stoned for not obeying the Sabbath. Afterwards, they're worshiping on Sunday, the day Jesus rose, and Paul even says in Colossians chapter 2, don't let anyone tell you you have to obey any Sabbath or festival day. Why would he say such a thing? Because what did the Sabbath represent? The Sabbath represented rest, and the rest has arrived. Jesus is our rest. We rest in his work, not our own.
So why we got to go to
In
church
fact,
every
out of
Sunday?
the 10 commandments, 9 of them are repeated in the New Testament. Which is the only one not repeated in the New Testament? Keep holy the Sabbath. Before they
Can you
believed
pause
in
it?
a
Can
conquering
you pause it?
Messiah,
Can you
afterwards
pause it? Pause it. All right. If we go to Daniel 12, I'm going to read you a little bit of this. And let's see. Okay. So let's go to Daniel 12, verse 9. Go on your way, Daniel, he replied. For the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless, and refined, but the wicked will continue to act wickedly. None of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. Now, that's part of Christianity's message. We can agree, right? You follow Jesus, you get baptized, you're washed, your sins are washed away, you are forgiven. God's Christianity is foolishness to the wise, that sort of thing. So we're getting that. So none of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. Okay. So and from the time of the daily sacrifice, let me start over. Verse 11. And from the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation set up, there will be 1290 days. Blessed is he who waits and reaches the end of the 1335 days. So for any of you having a calculator, I think they had a year that was 364 days, but it doesn't matter. So take 1290 and divide it by 365 or 364. You got a calculator, Pocket Locker?
On my phone.
Yeah, it's a little over 3 years. Who had a ministry, I wonder, that was about 3 years?
Yep.
So I think this is where a lot of that comes from. So in verse 13, but as for you, go your way until the end. You will rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of days.
There it is.
So I'm not so certain what the abomination of desolation is meant to be here. So that's something I'd have to research, but I'm not so certain what they mean by that. But it's clear we have the sacrifices being abolished. Once the temple in Jerusalem is destroyed, then it's really abolished. That's definitive. Now that's what, 30 plus years they estimate after Jesus allegedly died.
Right.
So, okay, so 3.54 years, 3.53 years. Thank you, AR, and thank you, Pocket Locker. So this is roughly the length of the ministry of Jesus. Go ahead.
Okay.
a sacrificial Messiah. Before they believed in circumcision, afterwards they believed in baptism and communion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what would cause these pious Jews who thought they were God's chosen people and didn't think a man could claim to be God, that would be blasphemy, didn't think there'd be a resurrection in the middle of time, but only at the end, what would cause them to abandon everything on the left and adopt everything on the right virtually overnight? The only thing I can think of is what psychologists call an impact event. What's an impact event? An impact event is an event that occurs in your life that is so impactful, so dramatic, that it can turn your worldview around 180 degrees. Some impact events are so dramatic that you'll remember what happened at that event, even if it was 10, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60 years ago if you're old enough. You might not remember what you had for breakfast this morning, but you'll remember an impact event that occurred that long ago. In fact, let me give you an example of this. There's probably only a few of you in this room that can answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you can remember where you were on November 22nd, 1963, raise your hand and hold it up high. Ladies and gentlemen, look around these. You see these hands up? These people with their hands up? These people are very old.
No, I wasn't alive.
November 22nd, 1963 is my earliest memory. I was 2 years old and 2 days. Yes, I'm 60 years old now. I know. I don't look a day over 59. In fact, when I turned 50, my wife was very encouraging. She said, honey, you're going to live to be 100. I said, how do you know? She said, because you look half dead already. Anyway, I'm 2 years old and 2 days. I'm standing in the living room at our home in Wanamassau, New Jersey, and my mother is sitting on an ottoman in front of a black and white TV, weeping uncontrollably. Mommy, what's the matter? What's the matter? They killed the president. They killed the president. President Kennedy assassinated that day. I can still see my mother.
I don't believe he remembers this from when he was 2.5 years old. I don't have many memories from that early in life.
It's 2 years and 2 days.
Visit. That's would anybody be surprised if Fuckface Frank Turek is just lying?
I would not be surprised.
Now in my mind,
it would not be his first time.
She was 26 years old. I can see her sitting there right now. She's 84 today. In fact, I just left her a few hours ago. She lives down in Fort Myers. She's 84. But I can see her when she was 26. That's my earliest memory. I don't remember anything before that.
Can't tell the truth about his own life history.
Where were you when the second plane hit the tower? I was at my home office in Weddington, North Carolina, where I live, and I had the TV on behind me. I had seen the first tower had been hit. I didn't know by what. And I was talking to a pastor on the phone on the north side of Charlotte, North Carolina. And we were talking about what topic I would speak on when I came to his church. And I said, you got the TV on? He goes, yeah. I said, maybe a Cessna hit the World Trade Tower. And we're just talking, and suddenly he screams into the phone. He goes, the second tower just got hit. I turn around, look at the TV, the second tower's on fire. I said, was it a Cessna? He goes, no. It was a big plane. It was like a United plane. It was a passenger plane. I said, you saw that? He goes, it was just on live TV. I said, wait a minute. Look, let me call you back. I hung up the phone, and for some reason that morning I had CNN on, and I'm not making this up.
Really?
But the commentator on CNN said
I'm not making this up, so he's definitely
one
lying.
has to think there's some sort of navigational error here. I said, navigational error? You doofus. This is the clearest day in the history of the Big Apple. You think pilots can't see where they're going? You think Stevie Wonder's flying these planes? I mean, come on. This is terrorism.
His jokes aren't landing that day. They weren't landing that day.
We're going to come to your church and talk about Islam, because that's what this is related to. Now, 9/11 was over 20 years ago, and those of you who are old enough can remember something about that day. But if I ask you where you were 20 days ago, most of you are going to get out your iPhone and go, I don't know, what was I doing that day? I don't know. Why can you remember something from 20 years ago but not 20 days ago? No impact event 20 days ago. Impact event 20 years ago.
Again, this whole goddamn spiel
you think a resurrection
has
would have been an
nothing to
impact
do
event?
with evidence for the resurrection.
Do you think if this guy really walked out of the tomb?
Well, his point is that it's an impactful. Can you pause it? His point is that it's an impactful event, and therefore sort of has a more prominent space in the mind. So it is going to be remembered.
Oh yeah,
by people because of how outstanding an event it is.
It's still not evidence that the event happened.
It's still not evidence.
It explains the change in these characters. But again, that's not in doubt, right? Like as atheists, we don't doubt that if there was a Jesus and if Jesus died for their sins and if Jesus rose 3 days later from the grave, that would have been a freaking impactful event. If I saw a man, you're right, Frank Turek. If I saw a man rise from the dead, it would be impactful. I would never forget it. You can ask me 50 years.
You saw it last week.
And I'll remember. Right, I'll never forget where I was when I saw that stupid African scam video. But that, just like in that case, it does not mean a man actually rose from the dead. It's just a plot detail in the story. It means that whoever wrote this story realized, seeing this resurrection would change these people. But this is just ridiculous.
Do you think they would have had any trouble remembering what he said or what he did or what his mission was if that really happened? No, that's the only way I can figure out why they abandoned everything on the left and adopted everything on the right overnight. In fact, here's what you might want to ask yourself. What did the New Testament writers have to gain by making up a new religion? What did they have?
Money.
What did they get out of this?
Money.
They got beaten, tortured, and killed. Last time I checked, that was not a list of perks. We're going to start a new religion. We are? Yeah. What's it going to get us? First, we get kicked out of the synagogue, then beaten, tortured, and killed. Well, sign me up. You know, what a great idea. Why haven't we thought of this earlier? In fact, they had every reason to say the resurrection did not happen. Not every.
What he's not saying is if they were lying or if they were telling the truth, this could have got them loads and loads of money and made their life easier. We see in the stories about Paul, how he says he would go around and his job was to find these people who were practicing this weird offshoot of Judaism and stop them, let's say. So if people like Paul were rare, and I've heard people say there's no way that's true, that was his job. There's no way that's true. But anyway, I don't know. There were fortunes to be made by this being a grift. And again, one person writes the story, other people write similar stories, and suddenly it feels true. We see this in our modern times, how people will you can watch Trump supporters. I'm so sorry. It's just, you're like the best example of this. Someone tells a lie and other people tell the lie too, but they embellish the lie.
Absolutely.
And it just grows and it grows and it grows. And then people who don't know it's a lie, they have no idea that it's a lie, they start believing it. And they will, if you play them a video clip, they will not embrace the fact, like, well, I can't, that could be fake. They have deep fake these days. Now that's true. But they will not accept the fact that their guy did wrong.
Right.
Or they do not think that that guy is subject to what? The same justice that the average person would get subjected to. He was a president of this United States. He's special. Well, he should have known better if he was special. But anyway, the point that I'm really trying to make is these could still just be stories. And we know with these stories, if you get enough, if you get millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, or just 10 people behind it, your life gets probably easier because now you have your little cult doing some of the things you have to do. Right? Yeah, your cult is taking care of it.
And they're still making money off of it today.
Turek is making money off of it in this presentation. I don't know if he'll eventually bring up money, which is a fantastic motive. What? Sex, love, money. Huge motives.
Nah, he won't bring it up.
I get this question a lot. Maybe you do if you're a Christian. Are there any non-Christian writers that talk about Jesus and the apostles? Yeah, there are. They're all in chapter 9 of the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Okay, you can read about them if you want. But you know what is often underneath that question? an illicit assumption. Here's the illicit assumption. You really can't trust the New Testament writers because you see, these people were religious, and we know religious people tend to embellish things. They make things up. You only need to look at the secular sources to figure out what really happened. Well, if you think about that for more than 5 seconds, you realize how silly that assumption is. What did these people have to gain by saying it was true?
So wait a second. Pause
Nothing.
it. Pause it.
They had everything to lose.
Pause it. It is silly. It is silly to assume that religious people have a motive to be deceptive. Think of all, and he poo-poos that, right? Think of all the different religions that exist today. I'm talking the stuff the Yanomamo Indian believes, the stuff the Bushmen of the Kalahari believe. I'm talking those people up in the mountains of China, what they believe. We go to Signagi in Georgia. What they believe, we go out elsewhere on the steppes, like in Mongolia or something like that. What they believe, if it's not Christianity, right? They have
He would say the same thing.
Set of beliefs. But those, look, somebody's wrong.
Yeah, I'm saying he would say
there's a lot of
reason to be. He said they'd have a motivated reason to be dishonest. They're
good. So do the people writing the Bible at every turn.
Yep. At
every turn. There's I forget the name of this. Like there's a papyrus that was found, an Egyptian papyrus. Ipuwer papyrus. And it talks about some tragedy going on in Egypt. And it wasn't written at the time that the Exodus is proposed to have taken place. And yet the guy on YouTube was doing a video how it was connected to it, like, or how it must be. It simply must be. And I'm going, these people who wrote the Old Testament ripped off other cultures too. The Noah story, it's a ripoff of another culture. You don't have to think of everything. It's already there. Just change names and locations. Now that's your culture story. The Odyssey and the Iliad, right? Just change a few things.
Yep.
Anyway, so it's ridiculous.
In fact, you may have heard of my friend Jay Warner Wallace. He's a cold case homicide detective.
Goodness.
He's been on Dateline more than any other homicide detective in the nation because he solves homicides that are decades old. And he's taking his own skills
because he lives
homicide detective to investigate the greatest homicide.
Because he lives in Los Angeles, and a lot of production companies, TV shows, and movies are in Los Angeles. He's just convenient.
He's convenient.
He's convenient.
He can afford to travel to the studio.
Time, the homicide of Jesus. He wrote a book called Cold Case Christianity and several other books. And he said whenever he finds a body that he knows has been murdered, he says there's only one of 3 reasons or a combination of these 3 reasons why that guy's dead. There's not 100 reasons why he's dead, only 3. He says there was either a sex issue, a money issue, or a power issue. Sex, money, power. Those are the 3 motivators that can motivate people to murder. In fact, they're the same 3 motivators that can motivate any of us to sin. Why? Because sex, money, and power are good things, but they're so good, sometimes we'll take shortcuts to get them. And so
I'm assuming power is very broadly defined in this case.
Writers invented the resurrection story, then what you need to figure out
not talking about electricity.
Did they have a sex, money, or power motive? Ladies and gentlemen, did
they have all 3.
Writers get real popular with the ladies.
They have all 3.
Resurrected from
exactly.
The dead.
Absolutely.
Did they get money?
Probably.
No, they were 21st century prosperity gospel preachers.
Oh my gosh, Turek.
No, they got exactly the opposite.
They got power.
Persecuted. Paul had power when he was persecuting the church. As soon as he starts becoming a Christian, he's the one persecuted. No, none of the motivators are here for this to be a grand conspiracy. In fact, why would they then die for a known lie? Now you might say, wait a minute, Frank.
This is the same.
Wait a minute, Frank.
The same shit that people buy into about Donald Trump. Motivated by sex, he just got convicted of sexual assault. Motivated by money? No. Donald Trump took a pay cut to be president of the United States. Motivated by power? No. Do you see all the controls and the restrictions they place on him? And no. He had way more power before. I mean, they just don't see it. They just won't see what's right in front of their face.
Well, again, the lie could be presented so well, that it's believable. And it doesn't take much. It's like I did I replied to some I put a comment on YouTube about Elon Musk and like, oh, he's figured out how to run a religion, and the steps are really simple. Give them hope. Step 2, take their money. Step 3, give them more hope. Step 4, take their money. And it goes on and like that. Show them, give them an example, or a concrete example is better than a false one. Great. Next step, take their money. And it's just that's what we're seeing here in Christianity.
Don't you have to say that martyrdom proves Islam?
100%.
No. Why? Because there's a lot of differences between the Muslim martyrs of today and the New Testament martyrs of New Testament times. Let me just give you one difference for our purposes.
The Muslim martyrs of today. Pause it. Yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair. Because in time, for as long as Islam has been around, there were people in the Crusades killing Muslims if they wouldn't convert. So if you have some Muslim who is very dedicated to their faith and they wouldn't convert, is that person a martyr just because they're not famous? I would think so. So that's a Christian who's supposed to have the moral high ground, killing someone else who believed in the same God and had a different set of data than they did. So to me, Turek is really one of the worsts with this, because he shouldn't know better. He does. He simply knows better and has no problem acting like a manure spreader for Christians, lying to them left and to the right, and suppressing facts to make his point. It's freaking ridiculous. And he's made a career out of it, which proves there's no reason these people in the first century couldn't have done the same thing.
Yep.
But the New Testament martyrs saw Jesus rise from the dead. They touched Jesus. They ate with Jesus. They verified with their own senses that Jesus had risen from the dead. You see, some people will die for a lie they think is the truth. Nobody will die for a lie they know is a lie. And the New Testament martyrs were in a position to know whether it was a lie or not. And
Lindsey Graham.
Anyway, you can't get better evidence than that unless you were there yourself.
Absolutely.
All right, the next thing I'm going to say is going to sound heretical for just a minute, but it's not. Stick with me. I believe the Bible's inerrant, and if you do, this is going to sound funny, but it's not. Christianity is not true because a series of documents we put under one binding we call the Bible says it's true.
Pause it.
Christianity would be true.
Dear viewers, if you want to make a short out of anything that's ever occurred on our program, use that. Yeah, it's not true just because it says it's true.
Exactly.
But that's why people think it's true, because it says it's true.
He needs a damn mirror.
True if the
well, as you said, say that again, but into a mirror.
Exactly.
How can that be? Because Christianity did not originate with a book. Christianity originated with an event, the resurrection. Do you realize there were thousands of Christians before a line of the New Testament was ever written? How? Because they went.
Christianity originated with this stuff here. Christianity came from this stuff here.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the fantastic movie.
It and then believe it.
I'm reminded of the fantastic movie Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, where was it Wesley Snipes? It says sometimes it takes a fairy. I think sometimes it takes a Messiah for this one. And that's all. It doesn't even have to be the real guy, right? It doesn't even have to be. to get people to believe, hey, look at all this stuff occurring around you. You know, this is the time. We hear that with these messiahs. I'm sorry, from these apologists a lot. Oh, we're living in the end times. Daniel was saying it was the end times. Daniel was saying the end times is coming. Enoch, again, the smart one. This is not for a current generation, but for a remote one, which is for here to come, right? It's going to happen in the future. So they didn't stone whoever wrote Enoch to death, right? So that's the smart way. I think, whatever. We know he's lying. We know he's lying. Frank Turek is just lying to these people. He's just, okay, I got my particular message. Yeah, there was no Christianity before. It wasn't written down, so it didn't exist. No, it existed. And they knew what, like I said, I said this before on the Hot Program. It seems to me that it was a cult. And the cult predated the Gospels. And it just picked up. It started with the story. It just picked up speed. They're going through the Old Testament. They think this is the time. So I don't know.
All right,
look, I'm floppy Bibles.
In fact, you could put it this way. The New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. There would be no New Testament documents written by Jews in the first century if Jesus hadn't risen from the dead. It never would have went anywhere. So you can be confident that Jesus actually rose from the dead. Now, there's a lot more evidence in the book. We just covered the first.
Oh, yeah, these are the 6 E's. I guess they're 8 E's now. Okay, go ahead. And then we'll finish.
If Jesus hadn't risen from the dead, he wouldn't have this wouldn't have went anywhere. It's strange to me. If we apply that logic to other faiths, respecting other faiths, they're also telling us the truth.
Yeah, and I think
they're also telling us the truth.
And we'll let them go. We'll let them finish going over this list, but they probably have the same. They have the same exact 8 criteria.
2 embarrassing stories and excruciating deaths. Here's a number of other reasons we know the New Testament writers told the truth, but we don't have time to cover that here because I'm down to a minute left. All right. But if you want to go further, the book is available on the book table. And if it's not, you can pay for it now and we'll send it here for next week so you can pick it up next week, no shipping. And the other book, Hollywood Heroes, How Your Favorite Movies Reveal God. If you want what we talked about here today and a bunch of other fun ways.
He wrote that with his son.
The truth about Christianity. Get the book Hollywood Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
But just text
Frank
the word
Turek
evidence to 855-909-0582. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the entire PowerPoint presentation, all 4 points, in a PDF format if you go ahead and do that.
Wow. Your own apologetic cheat sheet.
It's true. So what? So what if it's true? Well,
it's about to be an altar call.
The best news of all is that
I've said it before. You have Jesus bring his black ass down here.
When I was in the Navy,
he can stay. This is my spare bedroom. He can stay right here for free.
Wings, which were fairly hard to earn. But there's nothing more difficult to earn in the Navy than a golden trident. That's what the SEALs wear. Very few people that start SEAL training make it through. Maybe just about 5% do. But those that do wear that golden trident with pride. It is their identity. When Michael Monsour was buried in Rosecrans Cemetery in San
he's bringing
Diego,
it back to Michael Monsour.
Just about every Navy SEAL on the West Coast
callback, Frank.
Funeral. And when they passed his casket, they took off their tridents and pressed them into his casket. They took their identity and put their identity in the one that died for them.
Oh, my Lord.
The one that sacrificed for them.
This is just
That's what we're supposed to do. But our culture says, oh, no, put your identity in your political party, or put your identity in your race, or put your identity in your ethnic group, or put your identity in your sexual orientation, or put your identity in your vocation, or your spouse, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend. You know, none of those things are ultimate, ladies and gentlemen. Those identities don't really last. Your identity, my identity, comes from our Savior.
This is just
realize that Christianity is the only worldview where you don't achieve your identity.
All right,
You receive
all
your
right. Pause
identity.
tape. Stop the tape. And the fucking burn the goddamn tape. fucking, fucking. I can't stand this man. Oh, it's just god awful.
So wait. 1 John, no one who is born of God will continue to sin because God's seed remains in him. He cannot go on sinning because he has been born of God. I had to look it up on the internet. I didn't pull out my floppy Bible. But look, folks, this is another promise Christianity makes that we can't prove to be true. In his speech, Frank Turek sinned multiple times. He's lying to people, right?
Oh yeah.
So evidently, I mean, I can show you another empty promise. We can go to the end of the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16. You start at verse 17 and read to the end. You'll realize you don't have magical powers to heal people. You can't do it. You can't just lay hands on. Think of the copay if all you had to do is lay hands on. Like, no, you just did that one thing. So I owe like $8 or something like that. And here you are. So again, just filled with empty promises.
They don't take it seriously. They don't take it seriously. They know they can't. They know they don't have the power. They claim to believe Jesus has the healing power, but they take their narrow asses to the doctor. They claim to believe that they can heal and do all things through Jesus, but they know that they don't. And the ones who do end up like that woman that tried to heal you at the restaurant. They look a little out there, and people tend to humor them out of sympathy. But yeah, do you want to give us some closing thoughts?
Sure. If someone is sharing their faith with you and you don't want to hear it, just in the sweetest possible way you can say something on the order like, "Look, I'm glad it helps you. I've already done my exploration, but thank you so much for being willing to reach out. I'm not interested." And just as gently as you can, right? Let them know. You don't have to tell them it's a bunch of BS. You don't have to be insulting. You can just be gracious and, in a way, make them feel good about it. Or you could be, if you got the time and you want to be Socratic about it, you can draw out from them where they find the value. You don't have to endlessly question it. Just get enough to where they don't want to talk to you anymore. It's reverse it. But at any rate, that's it. I really hope everybody has a wonderful week and that you enjoy yourselves and live the best life you possibly can. That's it. That's pretty much where I'm at.
All right, gang, come link up with us and gather. We'll have our community meeting later on tonight, and we'll have some fun. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Take care of yourselves
and each other.
And each other.